All right, everybody, how are you doing? It's it's Friday. This is the Mission Command podcast. I There's people maybe coming on, okay, but I had my special guest that I was wanting to come on and specifically talk about this topic. She's down with she's sick, been sick for a couple days, and she's got a sore throat, so she can't really talk. So I'm hoping somebody comes on so we can have some back and forth. We're going to talk about how to consciously control the collective subconscious. What is that, right? So I have been a Toastmaster since like 1994. And I knew I was going to get out of the Navy. And I was writing a newsletter, Bad News, Boxers Against Drugs News. And I was, sharing leadership and analogies that I learned in the SEAL teams and from boxing. And somebody suggested I go to schools and talk to kids. And I'm like, and so somebody told me about Toastmasters. And I went to Toastmasters and I got hooked right away. I saw the undercurrent of leadership, and I saw the just how amazing these speakers were. This guy was they were having their tryouts for the speech contest, and this guy gave an incredible talk on how Francis Scott Key came up with the words for the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, and that just, man, that was it, right? And so then, and I had been a member of many clubs. I had gone through their basic manual, the first 10 speeches, several times. And I ended up moving to the Rio Grande Valley, and I signed up for the John Maxwell Speakers Club. It was like they're running a pilot program for that. And Bridget and Ryan Krause ran it, and they were the South Texas lead for the John Maxwell International Organization. And it was it was amazing training. It was teaching you how to use your microphone, speak with a microphone, get to the point, be brief, right? And she did a mastermind on this book. The same guy that wrote Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and Outwitting the Devil. All right. And in that mastermind, I learned about this collective subconscious, the hypnotic rhythm. Okay, like commercials. There's a perfect example was the Wendy's commercial. Where's the meat? Right, that commercial hasn't run for 20 years, but you still know what I'm talking about with that commercial. Okay, and they get these jingles that just stay in your head all day, right? And then there's something called the spirit of an age. It's a zeitgeist. Okay, and I read the book, and about it, and the and it's talking about Coco Chanel, right? And how what she did with her clothing line, because she was, she liked to ride horses, right? And most time, women, because they wear skirts, would ride side saddles. She started making slacks for women so they could ride horses. They could, straddle the horse, right? And then she came up with um, her clone. But the main thing was that what she was promoting was women's independence. That's what the zeitgeist that's still very prominent today, but that she's the one that started it, which was really crazy because like she had like strong ties to the Nazis, right? And but people don't know that, right? What the when you mention her name right away, people think of her cologne, right? But there's when I was a kid, it was Vietnam. Vietnam was always on the TV. I remember my uncle was in the war. He was in the army. He was a door gunner on a helicopter, and he was my favorite uncle. And I always was watching the news because I was concerned about my uncle, right? And then then I mean that lasted forever. I remember being like maybe 4 years old and watching seeing the news, and then I remember in like 1975, um, John Kerry getting on TV and testifying before Congress, and saying how they raised the villages and like Genghis Khan and raped and pillaged, and it angered me. I'm like 11 by this time, right? I'm like 11 years old, and then when I found out I wasn't even involved with politics, probably didn't vote until I was like um, 30 years old, and the but when I saw that he was running for president, I'm like, there ain't no way that guy's going to be my president. All right. And so I looked up, this is back before the internet, right? And I found a number of somebody, and they were having a campaign um, starter meeting at the library in Chula Vista, California. And me and this guy who was a retired um, retired Navy intel officer and worked for the FBI. We would team up and walk the precincts, the Democrat and the independent um, precincts, right? And it was really wild because they were really nice people. They just weren't. They were just uninformed, and we get to know them and stuff. And then, that was really crazy. Walked the Republican precincts, right? And they were not nice. they they treat us like solicitors, right? It was crazy, right? But so there had been different. There was the Vietnam War, and then there was after that was Watergate, right? And then after that was the you know Monica Lewinsky, right? Um, then after that, um, there was September 11th, right? And that still has a effect on us today. What because of that situation has it carried on to us for today, right? So there's things that happen. Now what's going on in Iran, right? These type of events stay with us, okay, and they affect us, right? So then there's all kinds of those. There's these jingles that you hear on, commercials. There's certain songs on the radio. There's things that steer us in a direction. Now, let me tell you, I had been in the SEAL teams for about 6 years, and a little over 6 years. And I came to find out that Jim Fowler from Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom was a UDT frogman. He was he went through Bud's training. This is before the SEAL teams, but he was a UDT frogman. And then the same thing with the cartoon Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest's bodyguard, Race Bannon, was written into the story to be a World War II frogman. All right. And then I'm like, oh, and then Lloyd Bridges from Sea Hunt. And I used to watch that, was a UDT frogman. And I'm like, Jesse Ventura was a Navy SEAL. I actually met Jesse a couple times. He knows who I am if he sees me, right? And then so I'm like, oh my gosh, was I manipulated, right? Was my decision making steered by some puppet master? I mean, I started like paying attention to this kind of stuff, right? And so what can you do to keep yourself from being steered or manipulated? All right, so this is what we're going to talk about today, right? Because I run into this all the time, and a lot of it has to do with ignorance. I run into people that have no idea of what I'm talking about. It's like I joke around. I'm in financial services, life insurance, annuities, estate planning, that kind of stuff, and I like to focus on small business owners because they're money motivated. Otherwise, they wouldn't have started a small business, right? And they know whatever it is, their product or their service, like nobody else, right? But when it comes to the money, they are very uninformed. Got somebody now, saw him went from like making 58 grand a year in 2022, now 2.5 million. Okay, which is awesome for him, right? But he's got to pay a crazy tax bill. Okay, so there's things that he can do to significantly reduce how much he's paying in taxes. But down the road, when he gets older and he needs the money the most, he's going to get hit with taxes. So we got a strategy I'm putting together for him to make enough money to offset, enough tax-free money to offset what he's going to have to pay in taxes when he needs it the most when he's older. Okay. But he had no idea, right? He's like, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and the phone starts ringing and things start happening, and now I'm like, yeah. And then here comes the IRS, like, okay, they're holding out the bag, right? And people don't understand that. I'm part of the Christian Entrepreneur Club. We had a mastermind call yesterday. And so when it comes to people like from the trades, HVAC technicians, welders, automotive repair, electricians, those people in the hair business, right? I have all kinds of hacks, all right, to help them increase their bottom line. They can make more money, right? And I did that because, I'm like, if somebody doesn't have discretionary, they don't have more money than they're spending, I can't do anything with them. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get somebody who is in the habit of spending all their money to stop spending all their money, right? And start saving their money. Right? It's easier if somebody's a saver, but if somebody's doesn't have the habit of saving, starting habits of any kind are difficult. Whether it's eating right, exercising, it takes a lot of concerted effort, a conscious effort to get control of your situation, your environment, to start doing whatever it is you want to do, right? They say it's like 21 days of actually physically doing something before it becomes a habit, right? Now, if you're just going to learn about something, you have to read about it or hear about it 66 times before it becomes a habit, becomes part of your subconscious. All right. And that's difficult. All right. But as I'm out there talking to people, I hear it all the time. I'm just as part of my, here I've heard it over and over and over again, a lot of misconceptions about money and finance. In the Christian community, it's like money's bad, right? I've heard it over and over my whole life. My mother, oh my God, I love my mother, right? But um, my mother's first job was working for the heirs of the Old Crow Whiskey Company, and they were all alcoholics, and my mom used to do stuff like dump the liquor into the sink, dump it out, right? And then they started drinking the vanilla extract. So my mom started buying non-alcoholic vanilla extract, right? But because of that experience, my mom grew up poor, right? My mom has a disdain for anybody who is financially successful, right? When I was making, $200,000 a year, right, and my mom wasn't very nice to me, right? I mean, she's retired. She's come to visit. It's all she has, she can do whatever she wants. I had to keep going to keep pushing to make that money, right? And mom didn't like it. My mom's nicer to me when I'm broke than my mom is when I have money, right? And then I started, uh, I became part of a ministry, and I'm at this ministry house with a bunch of young guys, right? And I started trying to teach them about finances, over their head. And I'm like, oh, I got to really ratchet this back. And I was like, who invented money? So guess what? There's a name that when you look up who invented money, it's a guy named Hammurabi. He was a Mesopotamian king, and he came about. It's really interesting how this progression is, right? After Joseph was the comptroller for Egypt, and he used the weights and measures formula that Joseph used when he was managing the storehouses for the Egyptians during the famine. Okay, to come up with his code, Hammurabi's code, which were the rules for money. Okay, there was really no money prior to that. Okay, what happened is he was at a little country between four big countries, Mesopotamia, and he was collecting tariffs from the bigger countries that were going across his country, trading with each other. And then when he was building up his military, and they would conquer an enemy, they would pillage them and get the booty, which would be gold and silver. And some units had more money than others, and so the leadership was like, okay, turn it all into us. They melted it all down and put their unit insignia on it, made these coins and called them shekels, and that's started to distribute them. And then Hammurabi's like, that's a good idea. Turn it all into me, right? And then that's how he came up with the rules to administer the shekels, that money, right? Now, which is really wild, is later on when Moses wrote his 613 Mosaic laws, and you read the laws of Moses and you read Hammurabi's code, it's like, oh, this is the same writer, right? What he did, he just replaced the shekels for animal sacrifices. Why do you do that? Well, if you have enough money, you wouldn't have to adhere to the law the way that Hammurabi's code was written. Okay, so with the animal sacrifice, it the blood of the animals got them reminiscing about the Passover with the blood of the lamb over the doorway, which was, make them reflect to think about God and how God saved them and delivered them out of Egypt. Okay, so this goes progresses, right? It's a very interesting how a lot of the rules in Hammurabi's code still are in our laws today. Okay, so this is this whole so the collective subconscious, the when you read in Think and Grow Rich, something that Napoleon Hill talks about is setting up your mastermind. Okay, and so he had, successful people, and from history, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, um, Henry Ford, right? And he knew them either from reading books or actually knowing them personally. And whenever he had a major decision, he would have an imaginary council meeting with those advisors, right? And 9 times out of 10, the decision he would come up with would be 180 degrees from what everybody else would. Okay. So I'm like, oh, let me try that, right? And this is really wild. So I used to read all kinds of books about Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Kit Carson. Daniel Boone wrote a whole bunch of books, and or they were written about him, right? And a lot of them go into great detail of how to skin a bear, how to dress out a bear, right? And deer and other animals, right? And the and then Davy Crockett, his um, running for Congress, and then uh, fighting in the Alamo and dying in the Alamo, and then Kit Carson, a little short guy, so I could a little short redheaded guy, freckle faced and tough guy, and he used to take every time he killed somebody, he pounded brass tack into his pistol. I don't know if that's just a story or if that really happened, right? And he was an Indian fighter, but he was also an advocate. Daniel Boone too. Daniel Boone was an advocate for Native Americans, even though he fought a lot of them, killed a lot of them. But he lived with them for a while. Okay, David or Daniel Boone did. He lived with the Indians, and so these I'm I found the book, the Blackledge book. My born name is Reuben James Blackledge, and I found the Blackledge book, called the lady up, and she asked me, uh, "How did what do you do? How'd you get in California?" And I told her I was in the SEAL teams, and oh wow, what made you want to do something like that? Well, I used to read a lot of books with Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Kit Carson, and you know, I used to do a lot of raccoon. My uncle taught, would take me go coon hunting. I used to, my senior year high school, me and one dog and a 22 rifle killed 34 raccoon that year, right? And so, you know, kind of gravitated toward that kind of lifestyle. And she's like, oh my gosh. So she, in the Blackledge book, 11 generations back, one of my ancestors, one of my great, 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 great grandmothers was Daniel Boone's aunt, Daniel Boone's mother's sister. So Daniel Boone and I have the same, and then traced it even further back, a guy named Stephen Hopkins who came over on the Mayflower, and in his lineage were like, 5 signers of the Declaration of Independence, right? So I got a little bit of relationship with Benjamin Franklin and Samuel Adams, that actually are in my bloodline. Isn't that crazy? Crazy, right? So there's all these influences. There's hereditary influences. There's association through your family upbringing and how your your habits that you get created throughout your life, right? You don't even think about. You do things a certain way because that's what you did. There's a story about the honey baked ham, right? There's a family reunion or Thanksgiving dinner, and all the families together, and the youngest girl's like watching her mom, you know, cut the ends off the ham before she stuck it in the oven. She said, Mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham? She goes, well, your grandma did it, and so I do like she did it. Why don't you go ask her? So she goes in the living room, and Grandma's there, and she's like, Grandma, why do you cut the ends off the ham? And she's like, well, I did it because your great grandmother did it. And well, why did she do that? Well, I don't know, but she's here. And so she's out in the back patio in her wheelchair, and little girl's like, you know, great grandma, why do you cut the ends off the ham? And she's like, well, when your great grandfather and I got married, we lived in this little cabin, and it just had one stove, a potbelly stove, and I had to cut the ends off the ham to get it into the oven. Okay. And so those are the kind of things we're talking about. The way of doing things that may be obsolete, right? Or a lot of misinformation being, out there that people act on as if it's fact, or if it's like written in stone. If it's, and it's things have changed, right? We have a different way of doing things, now, in that it's hard for people to adjust to. Okay, if they're not familiar, they're just going to do it, the way they did it, right? Back in the day, $800 a month was enough to live on, right? Not anymore, right? You're lucky if you can pay your rent with that. Okay. And so when you're older and it's harder, there's got to be more money. You have to make more money. Oh, we have somebody coming on. Hang on. Where is she? Here she is. Okay. Hello. How are you? I'm not, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Hello, how are you? There you go, sir.
Oh, I'm delighted that you have come on. All right. So I just talked for half an hour about the
Yes,
collective, how to get control of the collective subconscious. Do you know what that is?
the collective subconscious. I did not do any research or any looking. I just came up here blindly and could not get logged in. And I decided that I was not going to quit trying. It didn't matter if I missed half or three quarters, I was going to get in when I could.
Well, you're a good one to have on for this. Okay. So, so the your subconscious is basically the accumulation of all your habits throughout your life. Okay. And it's a sub program that's running under in the background that causes you to make a lot of decisions, and choices that you make. Okay.
Yes.
And then there's this collective subconscious, which is everybody else, doing that. And then you're being covertly influenced by what you see on television, the programming, the
Yes.
advertising, the what's on the music on the radio, all these things. Um,
Mm.
the the that like I talk about and I talked about it earlier on the podcast here about if I say where's the beef, you know what I'm talking about. What has happened? Where I am frozen. What is up? There now, I can see you. Can
I
huh?
see you, but you're frozen state.
That's really wild. And I don't know how to. Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes, sir. I can hear everything you're saying clearly.
Okay. Hopefully it'll unlock here.
And
Oh,
people, honestly, people do not realize how influential the external influences are because of the habit of scrolling. Like the average American is somewhere between 20 to 40 hours a week on scrolling. And so just think about how much you would have to put in of the word of God truth to counteract all that influence and lies and information. Not all of it's lies, but much of it is, and so you're not able to cipher through it as all clearly
oh,
if you
even
don't have an equal amount of truth in you.
well, even when it comes to like preaching, right? Or the like, I just finished up the book of Job,
Yes.
and so like chapter 40 and 41, they're talking about these beasts, the the oh Leviathan and the
Hmm.
Behemoth, right? Well,
Hmm.
they're like there's no animal alive. It has been, that fits the characteristics of the behemoth. People think maybe an elephant or a hippo or a rhinoceros, but because they have a little bitty tail, and then the description of the behemoth is a big tail, right? Well, when
Yes.
you read about its characteristics, though, it's just this massive thing that just kind of lumbers around and lays under the the trees, and I'm like, oh, I knew so many guys like that. What is up with my video? The
Still.
the that they didn't, they have so much potential, right? But they just hanging out, watching TV, right? And lounging
Mhm.
around, and they're not, they have the ability, if they took action to be substantial, they could do something, but they don't, right? And
Yes.
that is the behemoth, right?
Yes.
And the Leviathan, right, talks about, that it's like you just can't control this thing. It's just powerful and violent, and the only one that can control it is God,
The
right?
strong
And
man. That's right.
the uh the behemoth is the sluggard, right? The sloth,
Hmm.
right? And the Leviathan is that fear, the fear of death, the fear of punishment, the fear of somebody yelling at you, right? The fear of you know punishment. That's and it holds people still. So what he's really talking about is leadership. He's talking about getting people. God has the ability
That's right.
to move people, move the behemoth, right? Control. Christ wasn't afraid of death, right?
Nope.
In fact, he
You welcomed it.
tried to make it happen, right? He was intentionally didn't defend himself, right? And did everything he could to have that, to make it to that date with the cross, right? And
Yes.
so when you take that fear away from somebody, when somebody takes that, doesn't have that fear, they're dangerous. They're
That's
very
right.
dangerous.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so part of what I was talking about is how to get control, consciously control the subconscious, the collective subconscious. Was we talk about a mastermind, okay?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
there's a book out, Napoleon Hill wrote, Outwitting the Devil, and
Yeah.
he
The
talks
mind of
about,
Christ.
right. Well, he talks about how to set up a mastermind, okay? And then I was talking about this right when you came on, okay? Having he had people, the George Washington, uh, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, uh,
Mhm.
these people, this is the wildest thing, right? That were renowned good decision makers, right? So when he had a
Mhm.
difficult, he would have an imaginary council meeting, his table of advisors in his mind. He would bring that question to them, and 99% of the time, what he would decide based on their what he knew about them and how they made their decisions, his choice of his decision would be 180 degrees different than the rest of society.
Mhm.
Okay. And then so I'm like, I'm going to try that, right? And so when
Good
I was a
idea.
kid, I used to read a lot about Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Kit Carson, right? I've read every book ever written by J. Paul Getty like 4 times, right? And so I'm doing this, right? Well, come to find out, long story short, I'm actually related to Daniel Boone, right? 11 generations back, one of my great 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 grandmothers was Daniel Boone's mother's sister, Daniel Boone's aunt. Okay,
That's wow.
and then even further back with
Genetics.
them, there was a guy named Stephen Hopkins. He came over on the Mayflower. He was the great grandson of King Edward IV, and through him, I'm also have related to Benjamin Franklin and Samuel Adams. Isn't that crazy? Right?
That is
Just
wild.
right. And so then the like
Synergy.
my oldest son knows it. I didn't know this growing up. My oldest son knows that. So in the back of his mind, right, he's the heir to the king of heir to the throne of England in his mind, right? Understanding, right?
Yes.
But it makes a huge difference, right? And then
Yes.
I became
It does. It
so
does.
I started trying to put together my own table, council of advisors. And in it, I had Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Kit Carson,
Heck
Jack
yeah.
Dempsey, J. Paul Getty, and Theodore Roosevelt.
Ooh.
Okay, who I'm also related to. All right, in it is in my family tree, right? And then, well, in my mind, having the first like meeting of these imaginary council of advisors, Kit Carson and Jack Dempsey didn't get along. They were very contentious to each other, right? In my mind, right? And now Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Kit Carson, they were like like peas in a pod. They all got together great. And the same thing with J. Paul Getty and Theodore Roosevelt. Okay, and then I read the biography of J. Paul Getty called "As I See It," right, and had no idea about this before I did this, right? But J. Paul Getty and Jack Dempsey were best friends.
That's wild.
And the first $1 million that Jack Dempsey ever made wasn't in boxing, but it was in the restaurant business, in a business that J. Paul Getty set up for him. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild, right? And then
Yes. No
also,
coincidences.
right. So there were yeah, just wild how that happens, right? So when you are trying to get that you want to make sure that you're being influenced correctly, right?
That's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
you have to determine the direction you want to go in your life, and you seek the people that are going in that direction,
That's right.
that
Cling to
are
like-minded.
right, and
Yes.
that's who you have. And you do whatever you do, what you have a meeting with them, you know whatever, once a month or once a week or whatever, right? And they
Yes.
can. So part of I'm part of the Christian Entrepreneur Club, and we had a mastermind meeting yesterday. And it was hard for me because the businesses, there's a lady who's an author, another one's a consultant for women who basically they have to change their identity because now their kids they've been a mom for 20 years and now their kids are grown and out of the house, and maybe their husband died or they've left them, they're by themselves. They have to reinvent themselves, right? So that's her purpose. Okay. And then other people a lot of people, an AI consultant, right? Now I use AI a lot to do videos. I use AI a lot to do my social media promotions for my business. Okay. Um, I have conversations with Copilot and Marbleism, right? About
Yes.
stuff, right? Like I can through that reference bouncing back, I can trace the connection from Joseph in Genesis and his weights and measures for when he was the comptroller and having to administer the storehouses for the whole region during the famine.
Yes.
That those weights and measures Hammurabi used when he wrote Hammurabi's Code.
Wow.
And then when you look at the 613 Laws of Moses, and you read it and you read Hammurabi's Code, you're like, oh, this is the same thing, right? This is, and what Moses did was replace the penalty in shekels. Because if you have enough money, you can break the law you want because you have enough, right? Because the way his law was written. So Moses replaced it with the animal sacrifices, and the blood of the animals would be reminiscent of the blood of the lamb over the doorway during the Passover, which would bring them back to thinking about God. And that's what he did that. Okay. But I was talking about the zeitgeist. Do you know what that is?
Yes, the zeitgeist. You can refresh me though, because I'm not going to say that I know but I have it written down in my notes somewhere. That was one of the words. A lot of the influence of your videos have led me to research a lot. So have a lot of things in notes. But yes, that's something that has been, but I can't remember exactly. So you go ahead and refresh my memory though.
Well, it's the spirit of an age. Okay.
The spirit of the age. That's right. Zeitgeist is what we just talked about a couple of weeks back. That's why it's written down, because that was a newer one. But yes, I love your videos, and they give me nuggets to go dig further. And so anyone who has
Well, you started breaking up there. I don't know if you have to. Now you're frozen. What's up with that? Now you're going. You're okay now. All right. So you've got it. So the
we
spirit of
both
an
did for a split second. Okay.
yeah. So
Yes, spirit of the age.
right. Okay. So in our lifetime, there was the Vietnam War, and then Watergate and Richard Nixon, and then the 1979 the Iranian taking over the embassy, which is really wild how that's come back. This conflict with Iran, we're in the throes of it now, right? And it's a carryover from that time, right? And that's really one of the reasons I joined the military, was when that happened. That was in like 11th grade in high school when that happened, and it angered me. And I'm like, I'm going to join the military and get some respect for our country, which just sounds really naive, but there was enough of us that thought that joined the military, and a lot happened with those people. That those were the guys that formed SEAL Team 6. Those are the guys, that special operations, Delta Force and all that came out of that. That was right. And now you're seeing, what's happening with what's going on right now is a continuation of what happened way, back in 1979. Crazy, right? But there's also been with September 11th, right? There's still, every time you go to an airport, right? The reason that we have to check our bags the way you'll take your shoes off and your belt off and
Yes, take our
everything.
shoes off. Yes.
Right,
Yes, sir.
because of what happened, during September 11th, right? So these are all zeitgeist. So these are all, it's, okay, it's the collective subconscious, okay? And the way to get conscious control of the selective subconscious is to put together your mastermind, put together your council of advisors, the people that make good decisions, and whether they're now or they're from the past, read them books, read about those people. I have not read a fiction book on purpose since probably 1994. I had somebody give me one time a book about Marco Polo. It was a big, thick book, right? And I read the whole thing, and at the very end, I saw that it was published by the same publisher as the Harlequin Romance. Oh, I was so angry because it wasn't the actual biography of Marco Polo, right? I'm like, oh, I was upset about that, right? But I've read a lot of books about, like I said, I've read every book written by J. Paul Getty. He wrote Think and Grow Rich, or he wrote How to Be Rich. He wrote How to Be a Successful Executive and As I See It. I've read and 4 times I've read all them books, right? And then Lee Iacocca's books, I've read both of them. I read President Trump's, Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal. These are, I'm trying to mold my mind to be able to think like the people who are in the situation, in the places I want to be, right? And I want to have a better life than I had growing up, or and so what I do is help people do this, right? And it's really crazy. It's like because everybody that I sit down with, we have to go down and look at their budget, and many of them don't have a budget. They're not paying attention to what comes in, what goes out. They just want to make sure that at the end of the month, they didn't spend everything that they were making. Right. Yes. And so there's things like yesterday when I was on the call, I know exactly what to do for somebody who's in the hair business, a stylist or a barber, or what they can do that I can, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to like adding a service like wig making, right? The health insurance companies pay for those prosthetic wigs for women who's going to have alopecia or going through chemo and radiation. And, they're like on the low end, $800, and they'll be in like every 3 weeks to get their wigs done. Right. So if a stylist can do that, add that capability to their business, they can really increase their bottom line. Okay. Certain things like marketing, right?
Yes.
Marketing to at sporting events, or or beauty, find out who runs the beauty pageants, right? Or cheerleading competitions. Guess what? That's your market right there, right? The HVAC business. Okay, you get certified to do inspections, right? You can double your income on a part-time basis in the HVAC business if you do that. Another is here in Houston, they have one of 3 underwater welding schools. There's only 3 in the country: Washington State, Rhode Island, and here in Houston. And they teach them, they have them get certified. They pass their Part 107 license to be able to operate the underwater autonomous vehicles. But that same license, they can fly a drone. So if a welder gets a contract to maintain a water tower, inspect water towers or pipelines, they get paid to fly the drone, and then they find the damaged area, and they break out their cutting torch and a welder, and they get busy, right? They can make more money, or they can get a job working, not just fixing cars, right, but working for a logistics company and maintain their trucks, right, and fix the trailers, and that kind of stuff too, right, with their ability to weld. And so, and I'm just, the so there's things like handyman, right? In the wintertime, their business really slows down. So a lot of them here in Houston, you know what they do? They put up Christmas lights,
That
right?
is a good idea. Yeah.
You
Yes.
know? And so
Add seasonal.
then another example is electricians, right? I was the estimator for LED City in Dallas, and they had the first OEM in China manufacturing LED lights.
Mm.
And so I'm reaching out. So I was bidding on projects all over, commercial projects all over Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and California. And
Oh,
one of my mentors, he was one of my buds instructors. He was chief of training when I was at SEAL Team 4. Uh, and then he came down with a platoon in Panama. So I knew him really well. He turned me onto this young, ambitious guy, electrician, who was doing the in-home entertainment centers, right? So I turned him on to LED City because of they had this digital signage or the digital video wall technology. So he just
yeah.
looked at past clients that he set up their big flat screen TV in their living room, right? Now they got a video wall, a digital video wall that they're watching. So they got like an in-home movie theater, right? And so
Yeah.
there's another guy. He has started the Veterans Franchise Board, and he has like 30 different franchise companies. He likes the veteran community. There's one of them called the Quick Mount Heroes Initiative, and it's it's setting up entertainment centers in businesses and homes. And like if you go to a coffee shop, there'll be like 4 flat screen TVs just rotating their ads for their
Mhm.
coffee or their mugs or their T-shirts or whatever, right? And I
Yeah.
like a little Black Rifle coffee shop, right? And so they got there's like several of them, and they all got like 4 flat screens. So if you mount 4 flat screens a day, 5 days a week, your take home is like $7,500 a month.
Yeah.
If one 10 by 20 digital video wall in a church or an event center or a sports bar, you'll double your income.
That's wild.
And
Yeah.
it's
That's the
basically
move
the
of technology.
same strategy, right? And so
Yeah.
listening to people and what they do for their business, I try to, guide them, and maybe there may be another additional service they can add to make additional money. So now they have discretionary. Now I can help them start saving for their retirement, right?
Yes.
And then other things like, like if you're making like $900,000 a year, you can max out your contributions to your
Hmm.
401k, which is $77,000 a year, your profit sharing, which is like $76,000 a year on top of that, and then the cash balance strategy. So depending on how old you are, depends on how much you can put away. But I got a guy now who's like 57 or 53. He's 53 years old, right? And he makes like 2.5 million a year, and by maximizing his deferred plans, he can save $170,000 a year in taxes.
Mm.
Now, down the
That's
road,
funny.
when he's 73 and he has to take his mandatory distributions, they're going to be between $350,000 to $415,000 a year, and his tax bill will be between $110,000 and $150,000 a year. Okay. And so setting him up, taking some of that tax savings, some of that $170,000 tax savings, like $60,000 a year, putting into a tax advantage vehicle, he will have enough tax advantage and tax-free income to offset his tax bill at age 73. Okay. So that's the kind of stuff that I do, right? It's quality,
Yes.
it's a quality problem, but it's getting somebody to that point. There's an advisor. He has I have a banner on my website for him. It's a B2X, built to exit. And he's, he looks for people that are making like $350,000 a year with their business. And his automatically, and people that are in the trades, plumbing, welding, electricians, whatever, contractors, he has clients already. Just by bringing him on as a consultant, he can get their business to pop up to like $750,000 a year. And then when that happens, he's got equity investors that would invest in their businesses. And so the trick is getting people to that point. Now for me,
Yes.
it's just getting, I started looking into this when I started like, okay, if somebody doesn't have enough money, it's really difficult for me to do anything with them. Right.
Yes.
And so, and it's easier to talk to somebody about how to make more money than it is and how to spend less.
Yes. True story. True story. Yes, sir.
So based on, the reason for this, I had somebody on that knows a lot about the this collective subconscious and the hypnotic rhythm and all this stuff that, is holds people back. So
Yes.
like talking about the behemoth and the Leviathan, right? There's that just laziness and all
Yes, I've
laziness.
reviewed that spirit lately.
It's fear in disguise. It's fear of failure. It's fear of doing something wrong or wasting your time that keeps you from actually doing something that's actually going to produce, right? And then there's that fear of death or that fear of bankruptcy or that fear of failure, right? And it's like, once I lost 10 of my first 12 fights. And I started winning when I gained the attitude of like, I don't care who gets the trophy. I'm just whipping somebody's butt. And then I started winning, right? And it's having taken, and it sounds reckless. Okay.
Yes, but it's freeing. There's something about walking by faith and not by sight.
Well, another thing is, when you get to the point when you're, you keep hitting the wall, and sometimes you have to take a step to the right or left and walk through the door.
That's right.
But
That's right.
you don't want to just walk through the door, you want to run through the door. Okay. And it's helping people, guiding them to that point where you get them on the right path where they can go all out. Okay.
Yes,
and that's what I try to do. And I'm not claiming to be a business consultant and charging you consulting fees. I want to, once you're making more money, now let me help you get the most out of
it. Yes. Yes.
And that's where I make my money.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's my whole modus operandi. There you go.
Yes, sir. And I love it. And that's why I think the Lord linked us together, because I'm the run through the door person now. I don't have the income, but I'm just able to go back to work in the workforce. And so I'm doing the driver. I'm doing Spark and DoorDash. Well, I can't do DoorDash because I'm using a Vespa at the moment to deliver. And so, anyways, but I need some licensing fees to get a business started. My daughter wants to open a business, and I want to help her get her Heavenly Manna started, which she does homeopathic products and she bakes. And she's partnering with a local coffee shop where she's going to start putting her baked goods in there. And so she'll have her name in a building in a business for the first go round. And then she'll be able to put her products, I'm sure, quite sure after they put our baked goods in there, she'll be able to sell her other products. So anyways, I'm trying to get her help to help get that happen. And we need funding. And so I am healthy and ready to go to work. And so I'm not really one that works well with others. So I figured being my own boss is the best way to go. And so I decided to do delivery driving at the moment. And I need to expand that as well because I was DoorDash. I was going to DoorDash, and they don't do two wheels in my area because I'm not in the city. I'm too far out for that, and so I signed up for Spark instead. So I was also going to get some advertising and do individual deliveries in the community, and use AI to help me with marketing on how to make those ideas come to fruition. But you're a plethora of information, and I'd love to meet with you, like I said, in live person sooner than later. And we did get our, I know this is your other video, but our active status for the nonprofit organization is current and active. So we have a lot to move forward with that. We've got some things to discuss on that area too. So anyways, I appreciate you and your time and all your knowledge. You are a plethora of knowledge, and you are always iron sharpens iron. So I love whenever I get the opportunity to take in and hear your feedback and learn and grow from you. So I appreciate you, Ruben.
Oh, you're just giving me so much content. So this is we're on StreamYard, and I'm going to end this here shortly. And
Yes.
StreamYard will process this whole podcast. The first half where it was just me, then the both of us, and then it'll break it up into little of clips. All right. So I'll send you all of them. Okay. All the clips, and you can use them however you'd like, right? But I really
Yeah.
do appreciate you coming on. A lot of good content. And I'd like to talk to you about what your daughter's doing, and of course more about with the nonprofit. So, all right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You made this podcast.
Thank you. You're awesome. And keep the good work. Keep contending for the faith, and righteousness is the pursuit. You can't go wrong when you do what's right because it's the right thing to do.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. God bless. Bye.